Hello everyone, Michael from TOAMagic.com. Currently on the TOA road trip where we're spending a bunch of money and buying awesome cards. So I'm shooting this from a hotel room, but one of the questions that's come up a lot during this road trip is how we actually pay people. Now a lot of the collections that we're buying are fairly substantial, things like a Beta Lotus or an Unlimited set, and there's a lot of different options here. So I want to kind of go over those options, talk about what's better or worse in certain situations, and inform everyone out there how they can go about buying collections on their own with these various methods. So first off, we have cash, we have business check, cashier's check or certified check, bank wire, PayPal, and peer-to-peer cash transaction, which is like a Facebook Pay or a Zelle, any number of these things that exist that are all over the place. So first off, we have cash. Cash is great because everybody accepts it. Everybody knows that cash is real. You know what a genuine $20 bill looks like. You're not going to have a lot of problems handing somebody cash. The problem is that cash isn't scalable. Once you get above a couple $1,000s, cash breaks down as a means of transacting in a lot of ways. Let's say that you have $1 million in the bank and you say, Mr. Banker, I would like to withdraw $100,000 in cash from my account. The banker will most likely laugh at you and say, sir, you realize we don't have $100,000 in this branch. It's because banks generally don't keep that much money on hand. They know how many cash withdrawals they get in a given week or so and keep an amount of money that will generally satisfy those withdrawals. Obviously, they can order more money when they need to, and if a holiday's coming up, if it's a military base on payday week, they'll order more money when they feel the need to. And obviously, any bank can order money for a customer if you request it. So if you have $1 million in there and you say, I would like to withdraw $1 million in cash, the answer they'll give you most of the time is, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Or, why would you do that? But in general, they'll let you have access to your funds, even if you have a significant amount, as long as you have a good reason for doing it. And it's all in the up and up. So that's kind of where we are with cash. It's great for small deals. It's great when you don't really know what you have in front of you. It's great when there's not a lot of trust between the buyer and seller because the exchange is very stable. But cash is also risky in the same way. If it gets lost or stolen, you don't have a ton of recourse, whereas with some of the other methods, you have a lot of recourse. Moving on to a business check. Now, anybody can bounce a check. There's ramifications for doing so, but really anybody can do it. So a big part of being able to write a check is having a name and having a reputation that people can trust you. And if you've never bounced a check on somebody, it's more likely it's going to be fine. The big benefit of checks is that they're not worth anything until they're endorsed. If there's an issue, you can stop payment on a check. Writing a check is the most favorable one of these for the seller. There's also for the buyer, the person buying the collection. There's also no real fees attached. Obviously, you have to pay to get checks, but that's a couple cents a check. So it's definitely the most convenient method there. But in terms of compromise in the middle, it's one of the better ways of paying somebody if they trust you and if you have rapport. This is one of the big advantages you have as a brick and mortar retailer instead of somebody who does this out of their house. It's really bad when the local constable has to show up and hand you the paperwork of, hey, you're being sued because you bounced a check on somebody. Like, that's awful optics for your business. The negative reputation is huge. So you're not incentivized to bounce a check. Obviously, things happen and checks do get bounced from time to time. The thing that a seller should be concerned about is, what is the chance the buyer is good for it? And realistically, if the buyer has a brick and mortar store and you see that they have tons of cards all the time, if you walk in there and say, hey, you bounced this check, they should say, would you like to join me to the bank and I'll go get you a certified check, or I will withdraw cash for you, or, oh, here's like something we can work out that ensures that you're going to get paid, your interests are secured, and you don't have to worry about it. So if there's a reasonably large amount of trust, checks are great. Now we have certified checks. Certified checks are bank checks. They are done in a bank, signed by the bank manager or a teller generally, and the funds are guaranteed. This sounds great for everybody. The biggest problem with this is that you have to know who the check is being made out to, and you have to have an amount in advance. So if you say, I want a check for $10,000, they'll happily give you one, but it's for exactly $10,000. And if you show up and the cards are slightly worse than that, then you give them, then you don't have a recourse to give them less money in that form. You are stuck in this $10,000. One of the ways we mitigate that on bigger deals is try to do a cashier's check for about 80% of the value and then have cash for the rest, because generally you're not going to have a huge difference in terms of what the collection is worth beyond that. The issue with cashier's checks is that they can be faked. There's a number of well-known scams that exist in the world where people say, oh, I'm buying a car and it's a $7,000 car. They mail you a cashier's check for $10,000 and say, oh yeah, I accidentally sent you a little bit extra. The bank messed up the check. Can you just mail me a check back for the other $3,000? And you say, oh yeah, that's fine, and you mail them a check. And it turns out that the cashier's check looks all official, but the routing number is no good. The check isn't drawn on anything. It's just a fake check, and that when it goes through the system, it takes a day for it to say, oh yeah, this is a bad cashier's check. So there's not a real advantage of using cashier's checks because you have all the same issues of trust as well as extra effort with this other problem. Now, obviously, as a seller, people like the concept of a cashier's check because it is better and it does make sense. And if somebody requests, hey, can you give us a cashier's check? We'll always do it. That's not a problem. Next, we have bank wire. So this is using the customer's routing number and account number to mail them or send them money digitally. Bank wires you generally have to walk into the branch to do. When you're a business and you have more advanced online banking tools, you are able to do it online. There's limits, but the limits tend to be pretty high. Our bank wire limit is about $50,000 if we do it online, and then if we walk into the branch, it gets significantly higher much faster, or very fast. So if you need to send money to somebody, we tend to prioritize bank wire over like mailing somebody a check because it's immediate, it takes care of things, they appreciate it. There's a fixed fee on a bank wire though. We generally get charged about $20 a bank wire, and there are ways of making the fee a little bit less, but it's always going to cost you some amount of money to do a bank wire. So we try to prioritize that for only bigger transactions. Now, if you're doing this in like a peer-to-peer setting, bank wires take a little bit of time to go through, usually 3 to 4 hours, sometimes faster. So it's something that you're not going to sit there and wait for the wire to clear. And if you pull out your phone and do the bank wire on your phone, there's no guarantee that the app that you're using is actually the bank's official app, or you've just created your own app that looks the same, and you can kind of scam someone that way. So like, there's still some of these trust issues at play, and you have to know that the person who is buying your items is on the up and up as much as you can, because there are always problems. Now let's talk about PayPal. PayPal has been around for 25 years at this point. Very well known. There's a couple problems with PayPal. The first is that the fee is much higher on PayPal than anywhere else. It's roughly 2.9% plus 30 cents for a transaction. So you buy a $10,000 collection, you're now paying $300. Now, you can offset that $300 by using a credit card that gives you rewards. Now you're only paying $100 in total fees to do this, but that 1% still adds up. The margins in this industry aren't that wide, but the customer does get the money immediately. There are options for sending things as a friends and family payment, but PayPal really discourages that. If you get caught using that for business reasons, you could be on the hook for fees for a bunch of transactions going back. They can shut down your account. So sending a ton of money, friends and family all the time, does carry some risk. And again, this breaks down to larger numbers. That if you start to spend more than 5,000, more than 10,000, PayPal kind of gets a little bit suspicious, depending on how long you've had the account, and PayPal can hold the money on the buyer. So you really just need to be a little bit aware when you're doing this for deals of any sort of size. Finally, we have peer-to-peer money exchange like Zelle, like Facebook Pay. This has a lot of the same issues of PayPal, although there's not really fees, so that's an upside. But you're still capped at how much you can spend. Generally, those peer-to-peer sites try to cap you at $500 or $1,000 per day. So they're not really ideal once you start spending any real amount of money on a transaction. So how did we actually do all this? Well, most of the time it was writing business checks. We have this YouTube channel, we have a solid business reputation. We've been doing this for 7.5 years. And the buyers generally all knew us. We generally were put in touch with the sellers from generally reputable people that they trusted. So everybody felt very comfortable going into the transaction. And that's really the important part here, is that if you know who you're dealing with and you trust the person, it almost doesn't matter how you get paid because you know you're going to get the money and you know everything's on the up and up. I hope this answers some questions. I'm going to keep doing YouTube videos. I'm going to keep trying different styles of how I'm presenting information because I do want to have more content coming out so everybody can get a better glimpse into what life is like for me doing this or being on the road. I drove about 6.5 hours today and have a buy lined up 3 hours away tomorrow and then another buy lined up at the end of the day tomorrow. So it is certainly hectic, but it's profitable. It lets me travel and get out there. And I want to do it. So if you have anything you're looking to sell, please get in touch with us. Our contact information is below the video. You can email me at TOAComics@gmail.com. You can hit me up on Twitter at TOAMichael or any other way. You can also support us on Patreon, patreon.com/TOAMichael. Thank you everyone for watching. If you have questions on future videos, leave those down below.